I'm always the one on camera to talk about awesome dogfights between platforms, but then there are some awesome dogfights between the same platform, and even more so, there's some awesome dogfights to have between the same manufacturer, and that is the case here. I'm Aaron from PhoneDog.com, and I've got two awesome Samsung devices in my hands. One is the Note 2. It's coming to the US later in the year on Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and US Cellular. And then I have the Samsung Galaxy S3, which has already been out on all 5 of those carriers. Design, a little bit different. Specs, a little bit different here. This one has a quad-core Exynos processor, 4G LTE when it hits the States, 8-megapixel camera, a big 5.5-inch display, and more. And then this one has a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon S4 CPU, a 4.8-inch display, an 8-megapixel camera, and ice cream sandwich in the States right now. Does the size difference and features difference make this one worth it, or should you go with the Galaxy S3 on your respective carrier? We'll find out in the dogfight, but first, special thanks to our partners at Best Buy Mobile because they've given us a ton of devices like this, like the Galaxy S3, for use in our One-Pawed Bandit giveaway game, and several people have won on the site at instantwin.phonedog.com. When you walk into Best Buy Mobile, they'll make sure you're walking out working. You'll get your email, your web set up, your contacts, and more, so when you walk out the door, you're good to go. Let's take a look. Note 2, Galaxy S3. Which one is the ultimate device? On Samsung? On T-Mobile? On AT&T? On Verizon? On whatever? We'll find out in the dogfight, which starts right now. Two of Samsung's finest in one video. This is the Samsung Galaxy Note 2. This is the Samsung Galaxy S3. Both of these devices are Samsung flagship devices. These are a lot of S's that we're trying to say here, but these are flagship devices on Samsung. Both of them are out now in international markets, in US markets. This is available right now on AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, and US Cellular, starting at $199 all across the board, though there are some holiday promotions running on the Galaxy S3. It's been out for a couple of months. It was announced in May in London, and now available, like I said, in the US with 4G LTE connectivity. Then you have the Galaxy Note 2. This is the newest iteration of Samsung's phablet line of devices, the successor to the Galaxy Note, and packs some awesome features as well. Coming to the US on those same 5 carriers, AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, and US Cellular, for varying price points and varying colors as well. So we see a bunch of different options here. For example, on Verizon, on all the carriers, you can get it in white or blue, and the blue is shown here. On AT&T, you can also get a red color, and then on Verizon, you can get black and brown now, in addition to those 2 standard colors that come across the board. Over here, color availability hasn't been quite announced outside of saying that there's going to be a white one and this titanium gray one. There may be carrier specifics we don't know just yet. All we know is it's coming soon to those various carriers. Specs-wise, a 1.6 gigahertz quad-core Exynos CPU over here, a 5.5-inch Super AMOLED HD display without pen tile. Over on the Note, you've got an 8-megapixel camera on the back, that is. 1080p HD video recording. You've got a 3,100 milliamp hour battery in this device, which is nice because when the US versions arrive, they'll have 4G LTE connectivity or HSPA Plus on T-Mobile, but that consumes battery life. HSPA Plus doesn't do a whole lot on the international version, and you still get that nice big 3,100 milliamp hour battery. So putting these side by side, obviously, with like an AT&T version, for example, when 4G LTE versions come, you'll notice the battery life will be worse on the AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint versions than it will be in US Cellular as well, I should say, than it will be on the international HSPA Plus only version. Like I said, 3,100 milliamp hour battery. This is running Android 4.1, also known as Jelly Bean, with TouchWiz running atop it. It's got some great features like Google Now and more. Than, of course, it has the much acclaimed S Pen, which has been improved and refined upon as well. It's much larger and much wider, easier to hold in the hand all around. Now, bigger display here, 5.5 inches, so your immediate thought, at least my immediate thought when I heard the rumored specs for this device, is holy, something I'm not going to say on camera, that is a big device. It's going to be even bigger on the Note 2. That said, they've done some great things here. First of all, they've made it look a lot like the Galaxy S3, which I should go ahead and segue over to that and talk a little bit about this device, then we'll come back actually to that. This is the Galaxy S3. It's packing a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon S4 CPU, a 4.8-inch Super AMOLED HD display with pen tile, an 8-megapixel camera with 1080p HD recording, Android 4.0, so it's running 4.0, not 4.1, ice cream sandwich with TouchWiz, and you'll notice the differences in the overall look and feel here. You'll see the Jelly Beanish keyboard up here at the top, or a Jelly Beanish clock rather at the top, and you'll notice that the notifications are a little bit different and more Jelly Beanish over here than they are on this one, obviously, because it's running ice cream sandwich. You do get 4G capabilities, be it LTE or on T-Mobile, since this is the T-Mobile version, HSPA Plus, and you get a 2,100 milliamp hour battery over here. So like I was saying, this device is still very hard to hold in the hand. Don't get me wrong, I have pretty big hands and I can barely wrap my hands around this. That said, the aspect ratio of this is a little bit different. They kind of narrowed it out and made it a little bit taller. First of all, making it look more like a Galaxy S3. You'll notice the physical home buttons, and you have capacitive menu and back buttons on both of these devices, as you can see here, making it easy to access two capacitive buttons and then your physical home button. Very similar in terms of design. Volume rockers both on the left side, micro USB charging ports on the bottom of both of these. You get your power buttons over here on the right side, and then you have your 3.5mm headphone jacks up at the top. So design-wise, pretty similar here. They've kind of standardized it in with the Galaxy S2, or a Galaxy S3 rather, on the Galaxy Note 2, I should say. That said, it's a big device, 5.5 inches. It's interesting though, even though it's a bigger display, you're not really seeing it translate into a larger device. It's a little bit taller than the original Note, but it's actually easier to hold in the hand. That said, it does create a little bit of havoc if you have skinny jeans or tight shorts, because it does stick out of the pocket ever so slightly more than the original Galaxy Note. The Galaxy Note was a little bit wider, a little bit narrow, or a little bit shorter rather. This one's a little bit narrower and a little bit taller, so that's something to keep in mind. Carrier installed applications, none over here. As you can see, this is all stuff I've installed. I'm carrying this as part of a 30-day challenge on the site, so be sure to check out my Samsung Galaxy Note 2 challenge videos for more information on this device. And over here, because this is a T-Mobile device, you do get some carrier installed bloatware. You get access T-Mobile out of the gate. Let's see what else. You get T-Mobile hotspot, you get T-Mobile name ID, visual voicemail, and then of course T-Mobile TV as well. Now both of these host a wealth of features. I'm going to jump right in now that we've talked all about that. S Pen, one of my favorites over on the Note 2. You have the ability here to scroll back and forth and use the S Pen. It's been much improved, and you're going to see some goodies if you're used to the original Note. One of my favorites is, for example, going to video player, and you can hover over things to see previews. So I can hover over the video, not touching it, but I can get the preview. When I pull away, the video will stop playing. And then of course you saw that same feature that you have in the Galaxy S3, where I can detach the video and move it around on the display while I'm getting some work done. So I can continue over here and go into settings, for example, if I want to, and access that. And when I'm ready to go and be done with the video, I can be done with the video. Now you may have noticed that a second home screen, or a secondary home screen rather, popped up. Both of these devices have 7 home screens, as you can see here. I'll pinch this out so you can take a look on the Galaxy S3 and show you the 7 home screens there. Both of them have 7 home screens. This is Page Buddy though. Page Buddy is a unique application here. When you pull out the S Pen, you plug in headphones. It's intended to be a page that makes it a little bit easier to get those things done. So an S Pen page is what you're seeing here, an earphone page, a docking page, and a roaming page. So as soon as I pull out the S Pen, it's like, oh hey, first of all it shows that I detached the S Pen, and you'll see the notification along with some recommended shortcuts. So when I plug it back in, you'll see the shortcuts will go away. And then of course when I pull it back out, you'll see, pay attention to the top left-hand corner, you'll see S Pen has been detached. Bam. There's also a warning feature. When I walk too far away from the S Pen, it will alert me and say, hey, you're leaving your S Pen. Are you sure that's something you want to do? So these are obviously some benefits of the Samsung Galaxy Note. You'll also notice, if you use the Note 1, the handwriting input has been much improved. This is much more natural. This looks a lot more like my actual handwriting, which needless to say is terrible. Phone dog is awesome. Handwriting, needless to say, is terrible, but it looks much more like real handwriting. So I could say, hey there, whereas the Note 1 did not look like that. And I find myself finding it much easier to stay in the lines, because again, it feels more like an actual input mechanism as opposed to just somebody doodling on the display. So much more refined there, thanks to a larger S Pen, thanks to better technology behind the software, and more. And then you get some nice benefits as part of the premium software suite, things like shape match, formula match, and then handwriting to text. We've covered this in a few videos, but as you can see, great for classes, if you're taking notes and doing things like that. Of course, formula match, I can do 5+5, and handwriting to text, pretty self-explanatory here. And I can transition it over to text like that. So I can close out of there. Same thing with the earphones. You get that Page Buddy. Now both of these have pretty awesome software applications, as you can see here. So settings, we'll go in and take a look. And the Galaxy S3 really pioneered this in a lot of ways. You can come down here, see the LED indicator, which you can turn on for low battery missed events or charging. But like I've said in a lot of Android videos, Android for the most part is saturated. The hardware is very similar across the board. You're seeing dual-core, quad-core processors. You're seeing the same HD displays over and over again. You're seeing a bunch of 8-megapixel cameras. So I think for a lot of these OEMs like Samsung and HTC, they realized that they've got to distinguish themselves amongst two things: ecosystem and software features. And you really see that with Samsung. I think they're doing an exceptional job. Say what you will about the overall hardware quality. You may not like the plasticky look and feel. What I will give them credit for is they do a great job with software. And the Galaxy S3 was the first Android device where I'm like, wow, this thing has some awesome software features that really just enhance the overall performance. You see a little bit of this with HTC. HTC has done some great things, as has LG and Motorola. Motorola is actually kind of skinning back a little bit and sticking with more of a stock Google look and feel. But what I'm seeing over here, for example, take a look at security. I can go to lock screen options and just a lot of cool features on this device that made me think, hey, they've really thought this out. So for example, information ticker, camera quick access when turned on. I can show weather. I can show all this stuff on the home screen. So when I turn the device off and back on, I have shortcuts. I can easily swipe up and access those, or I can go back out. I can see my time, my weather, and of course I can press and hold and turn to the side to activate the camera. So a lot of these neat little software features, for me, they seem like they're not a whole lot, but again, given the saturation of the Android market, these are some features that I think are really, really useful and do a great job overall. Display as well. I can change the font size. I can display the battery percentage. Those of you that watch my videos know that's a big thing for me. Other cool things like palm swipe to take a screenshot, as you can see there. A lot of these little software features are really, when you look, you look at the devices and you're like, $87,200,000 devices at all these different carriers. How do they distinguish themselves? It's all about the software. And you can see with motion as well. Direct call, one of my favorites. Smart alert, which this is pretty cool. When I'm in messaging, I'm like, I want to call that person. I can just put the phone up to my ear and it will direct call them without me having to dial anything. Smart alert is great. I actually use this quite a bit in the car because I don't text message while I drive, but I'll click on the thread. Instead of dialing the number, I'll click on the thread while I'm at a red light, and then I'll just put it up to my ear and I can dial from there instead of text messaging back. Thus saving lives. Smart alert is well nice. When you pick up your phone, instead of relying on the LED indicator, it'll vibrate. If you get a missed call, tap the top, you double tap the phone, it goes to the top of the list. Pan to move icon, pan to browse images. All of these are very useful. Palm swipe, as you saw, palm touch to mute and pause. Very useful software features where you're taking a stock Android look and feel and really enhancing it beyond what we've seen from some of the other OEMs. So really impressive all across the board here. Samsung's forte, in my opinion right now, say what you will about hardware, features, all that, Samsung's forte right now is software to me. When it comes to an overall software package, I think they do a great job. You get some enhanced stuff in here because that's running Android 4.0. It brought a bunch of new features to the table. This brings even more features to the table as part of Android 4.1. One of those is blocking mode. You can disable incoming calls. Very similar to Do Not Disturb on iOS 6, where you can come in here and disable notifications, alarm and timers, and more. And then you can set time. So you can say, you know what, I don't want anybody to call me between 10 and 5 a.m., but I'll make an exception for my girlfriend. I'll make an exception for my parents. I'll make an exception for my friends, my close friends. Allowed contact. Then you have those friends, that just call you at 2 a.m. and you're like, nope, they are going on the blocked list. Say what now? Yep, exactly. Exactly. Blocking mode, and that's a nice feature as well. Some of the power saving features are very useful. You can limit the CPU. But then you got some cool things. The lock screen, we'll come in here and take a look. Pop-up note on the lock screen is always very useful. And this is one that I use quite a bit. I'll come in here, for example, I'm in the middle of something, double tap, and it brings up a note feature, which I can take a quick note, and it automatically stores it in my S-Note file. It's very useful there. When I'm done, I can back out of that, and again, I can use that in quite a few different places, and I find that particularly useful. So a lot of different software features that are really enhanced over on the Note 2. It's a combination of the S Pen and Android 4.1 that really bring these new features to the table. But otherwise, display, you're seeing some similar stuff. Page Buddy, like I said, you can turn on and off. Smart rotation is great because let's say you're browsing the web and you're like me, I don't like landscape mode, so when I lay down I want to see it in portrait mode, but it always transitions over to landscape mode. Well, with this, it will detect your face, and as you can see here, I have my head turned, which I'm glad you probably can't see, but it's still over in portrait mode and stays over in portrait mode. Then this time, when I move my head away, transitions over into landscape mode. Huge features here. Again, software features are what make these devices great. Stay tuned for part 2. More software features, camera settings, speed tests, and more. Stay tuned.